Welcome to Industry Insights with Route Consultant, your front row seat to the fast-moving world of logistics and beyond. Each week, we bring you game-changing insights, real-world strategies, and fresh perspectives to fuel smarter investments and build stronger businesses. Join us as we sit down with expert guests to explore emerging trends and pressing topics across a wide range of industries. This is Industry Insights. All right. See everybody filing in.
Yeah.
So I will go ahead and get us started for everybody as you're getting into the lobby. Welcome back to Industry Insights Live. We've only done a couple of these this year. We kind of moved away from just doing in-studio stuff, and we've started doing more of these live webinars again that we used to. So for those of you who've never been to these, who are here for the first time, my name is Josh Gregory. I'm the Vice President of Operations here at Route Consultant. If you're not familiar with us, our team ran hundreds of routes across the country in P&D and line haul, and today we're here to help new buyers looking to get into the space for the first time and to help current contractors to continue to find efficiencies and additional profitability in their business. Before I get started, I do have a quick disclaimer to read, as I do every time I do one of these. So, Route Consultant is not endorsed by and is not recommended by FedEx Express Corporation, FedEx Ground, or Amazon. Route Consultant is not sponsored by, is not approved by, is not associated with, and has no connection whatsoever with Federal Express Corporation, FedEx Ground, or Amazon. So today I'm not here alone. I'm also joined by Amy Byers. So many of you may know Amy, but she is a P&D and line haul contractor with routes and runs across the country and a wealth of experience in the industry. And she's here, as always, on these to help bring her knowledge. So Amy, why don't you just say hi really quick before we jump into it?
Hi, everybody. I am Amy Byers, Chief Operating Officer of Slicker Trucking. My husband is the AO. We've been doing this for almost 20 years, and we did start with just one man, one van back in the P&D days. We now, I think the number was close to 195 P&D employees and close to 55 line haul employees, plus then our support staff, which is our maintenance shops, our mechanics, and some of our admin staff, as well as our management team. But yes, P&D, line haul, custom critical. We're kind of doing all the things. Maintenance shops. We have a gas shop for all the P&D trucks. We have a diesel shop for our line haul trucks, and all the good things that come along with that. So we're excited to jump in as always and answer some questions.
Perfect. And that is really what the goal of today is going to be. So there's a couple of things that we're going to talk about that Amy and I are going to go through, and then we will have this completely open for Q&A. Now,
Yeah, cool.
What I would say is important is if you don't see it, so there should be a little Q&A button at the bottom of your window. If you don't see it, you might have to click the little more dots and make the Q&A appear. But that is the best place to put your questions. If you put it in there, I will for sure see it. I'll try to monitor the chat. I know sometimes questions end up there. If I see them, I'll try to ask them. But if you can put it in the Q&A, I'll make sure that Amy and I address it. And quickly, before we get into the first topic, I do just quickly want to highlight, if you are either new to the space or a current contractor trying to learn more and be in person and connect with others, we have two events next week. So next Thursday, June 11th, we have a new investor summit in our offices here in Nashville. That's really designed around, if you don't know yet, if you're fully invested or fully ready for this space, and you're trying to ask those questions and figure out if it's the right space for you, those new investor summits are really designed to be a crash course and take you through everything around FedEx, P&D, and line haul, but also expose you to a couple of other industries if that's what you're looking for, introduce you to the partners and vendors that you'll need to work with, and kind of take you through a lot of the important information to really be able to make a decision on what you want to invest in. And then if you're here for that, or if you're a current contractor already, the next day we have a P&D Pro Series that's specifically focused on P&D contractors that are in the space, handling topics and some of the most important things. And Amy will be there. So will Dave. They'll be talking through a bunch of that, and they'll be speaking on those days. And so if you're already a P&D contractor, you should definitely be there. If you're new to the space and you think P&D might be an option for you, it's still worth being there. Again, both of those events are free. You can register on our site at rockconsultant.com on our events page. But it is in our offices in Nashville, Tennessee, and those are next week. So if you haven't booked your plans already, you got a few more days to go ahead and book it, and hopefully we will see you in person there next week. It'll be great to see Amy in person as well.
Yeah, I'm excited. Always love a trip to Nashville.
Yeah, yeah. And if you're here Thursday and Friday, you might as well stay for the weekend.
I mean,
Yeah. Okay, perfect. So, Amy, I know we're going to have questions, we're going to have topics today, but I think an easy place to start is just if you want to give a little bit of an update on where Express and 2.0 stands right now. I know that's something people are always trying to get an update on.
yeah, so for us, we're currently we're provided kind of a stand up, if you will. So Northeast Ohio is gonna go 2.0 here pretty quickly. So we are in the middle of and in all five contracts, right? So we have five P&D contracts. One is already Express, but that contract is actually changing quite a bit as well. So that's changing. The other four are going to go Express. So, I mean, all at one time, right? And within the same hub network, the information is so different in each one. And I think that's the benefit of what Dave and I can bring to this network is all five contracts. It's FedEx doesn't negotiate with us on the P&D side and say, oh, you have almost 200 routes, so this is what we're going to do for you. We negotiate each contract in that building as individuals, right? So I have a 12 route contract. I have 32 route contract. I have a 22 route contract. We have another 32 route contract. We have a 17 route contract. And all of those are being run and negotiated, and the changes are happening the same as someone that only has one route or one contract in that type, right? So we have rural in one, but the other one has nothing to do with rural. So it allows us to kind of get this experience and this kind of breadth of knowledge because we are kind of coming alongside all the contractors that just have one building or one contract. So it's really exciting that we can share the information. Right now, again, we're kind of moving and shifting. They've given us our changes. We're growing in some areas. We actually shifted. I thought we're losing some area, but gaining stops. Interesting. So that was a fun kind of mental note to think about. I'm like, you're cutting me down, but I'm growing. Okay. So I think that just the example is each change type needed to be looked at differently. And it wasn't just face value, like, hey, you're losing area. Like at blanks, at point blank, that kind of looks like, wait a second, what? Like we're 99.7 and you're taking stuff from us? That makes no sense. There was a bigger plan behind it, and it just took a little bit of review and things to kind of settle into what that looked like. Another contract, we're over doubling. And I think where we are right now is we're going through like what staff fits where because the truck sizes are moving, right? So I think part of this transition for us, what we're really working on now is, okay, that route used to be a 14-foot cutaway, but now moving in and taking over some of this area, it's a P1000. Okay, great. I need to buy a truck. And I need to make sure that the guy that's in the 14-foot cutaway is capable of driving that P1000. And then what's the infrastructure behind that? So it's an internal upsize road test and a capability test, and then going on a route with a guy that's running a P1000 route and allowing him to have some days behind the wheel instead of just being like, oh, let's rip the Band-Aid off and make our safety score go down to 0, right? So there's all these things that we're kind of moving and shifting. We're also moving into a totally different building. And we're going through the challenge of some of the people in the current contract don't live real close to that building. So we are finding a home for them and routes for them in one of our current contracts that are closer to them in the same area. So we are going through it is like people, trucks, hiring, and I think one point, if anybody is going through this change, FedEx is kind of, keeping everything very close to the vest and the big details we can't really share. But one of the things that you're allowed to do is talk to your co-contractors, right, in the building if there are changes that affect you or them. So we've been doing that, and my managers are like, well, hey, this, we're going to take over this area, and that guy runs 3 P1000s and a 1200. And I think that's what we should do. And I'm like, well, that guy's going out of business, so we're not gonna we're gonna put all those stops in the sandbox, which is kind of an area in Dro that FedEx allows you to kind of play with the stops. And we're gonna make a plan that's best for Slicker and how we would run it, because we know how we want to run things, not how that guy runs things. Now it's great to hear kind of what they're doing and how and why, but then I'm going to make my own decision. I'm not just going to adopt a philosophy or a structure because that's how it was done before, right? So I think long and short answer, that's where we're at.
Yeah, and it definitely sounds like there's still a lot of kind of puzzle pieces that you kind of
Oh
have to
yeah.
continually be shifting and moving things around. We've talked about it before, but it still sounds like people are one of the hardest challenges around that, about making sure who's the right fit and where. Do
Yeah.
people challenges still feel like, one of the biggest things affecting the space today?
Yeah, so I think people challenges in general, right now we're in a stage, and I think I've talked about this before, where you can bring in kind of newer, inexperienced people at a base wage. You're going to train them. You're going to have a little hiccups with accidents, maybe, or safety. And the learning curve is going to be a little bit longer. Whereas these kind of tenured, even outside the network, tenured drivers, safe, experienced, delivery, or just trucking experience, they're going to cost a little bit more. And then the people in the middle are the ones that, try not to come to work. It's great. But I think this, between the economic challenges, and just the workforce in general, it's changed so much, that you just have to find a different way to structure benefits. And it's not a cookie cutter anymore, right? Like before, I'd be like, hey, we start our guys at $150 a day, and that's what it looks like. Like that's not how it is today. It's really a negotiation and a conversation with each employee, when you bring them on. I mean, obviously you have a very base set of offerings, but that offering needs to be able to address the needs of different people.
Yeah. Do you find that the employees are are they open to being in kind of different boxes? Like, a lot of times employees talk. Is that a hard challenge where you've got one people on one plan and different people on another that fits them, but like, is there any of that dynamic that's hard to navigate?
So no, because all of the plans are offered to everybody.
Hmm.
So the plans are, like we have three employee medical plans, and we have, ancillary plans, short-term disability, and some retirement type plans, 401k, and all these different things. And we're kind of in this plan to meet people where they are, right? So we have a community of younger generation kids that are not necessarily into 401k, even though I try to push them and let them know, like,
Yeah.
dude, we match 100%. It's free money, tax free, free money. Doesn't matter. Right? So
Yeah.
what matters to them? Or I have kids that are 26 and under, and they're still on their parents' insurance. So medical benefits, though they're like, yeah, that's great, it makes you a good company, they don't elect. Right? So then what is the draw to keep them here? What's that retention program look like for them? Right? So is it career pathing? Is it education, or skill development? Like, what does that look like? So we try to meet people, where they are, and kind of understand. We have people that they're like, listen, I'm the provider for my entire family. I appreciate the PTO. We're not going on vacation, so I would like to cash that out. We used to be a use it or lose it type of plan, and we had to move to a program that allows them to cash out their PTO. And it's worked out, so just knowing your people. And I think, from a retention standpoint, just think about what your employees need, and don't offer what you think they need, offer what they're asking for, right? And what they need. It could be something super small. We offer an EAP program, which is employee assistance program, and it's free critical and mental health, as well as work-life balance things. So it's got like dietary and exercise and videos and career building. Like, I want to be a manager, but I have a terrible temper. How do I work on that? And they can actually take some skill classes that better themselves, whether they're going to stay with us or not. These are enriching the human, right? And benefiting the human. So we have those types of programs. The EAP also offers like free legal advice and financial advice and daycare advice, all kinds of stuff. Like, but it meets every single person where they are, and it's there for them and their family. And that benefit is so valuable to us because when your driver shows up with all this weight, right, this heaviness from home, it becomes super difficult to come to work. And I tell people all the time, I'm like use the program, right? Educate on the program. I tell my managers, point people to the program if they're stressing. If you see them falling off a little bit, you know, offer them, you know, that assistance to kind of, hey, we're recognizing this isn't really you. What can we do about it? And then just from the financial standpoint, wages are higher than they've ever been. And then the cost of training is higher than it's ever been, especially with, you know, outside influences, contingency, contractors losing their business and just kind of, you know, overpaying just to kind of hold on to that last moment. So, you know, staying in contact with your drivers and letting them know, like, hey, we're secure. There's a reason I don't pay you $300 a day because we actually want to be here in 2 weeks. So all those conversations, like, we're not immune to that at our size. These are individual contract conversations that we're having. And interestingly, again, 5 contracts in the same, right, 2 hour radius. The conversations are different. Each contract needs something different. And I always try to tell my guys, like, find out what the love language is, right, of that contract, right, where some of it's respect, some of it's, we have one contract where, man, if somebody calls off, those guys want my managers in a truck pulling as hard as they are. And if my managers are in a truck, they will go to the ends of the earth. They'll work to 8 o'clock at night. But man, if my manager's like, sorry, dude, I got to work on the schedule, they'll all bring their trucks back at the normal time without helping. Like, that's the love language, right? So just understanding kind of the needs and meeting your people where they are, has been a huge shift. It's something that we've never had to do, but in the last year has become really prevalent to how you manage people. And then, I mean, we can get into a whole nother side of that with discipline and patterns of, you know, bad behavior as well. You know, it's the pool of drivers, of, I guess, careful drivers, right? And I always say that, like, this job is not difficult, right? Take the box, deliver it to the house, right? Don't hit stuff. Like, it doesn't get super complex, but what you do need is a careful human, right? And a caring human. So you have to care about your team, you have to care about your attendance, you have to care about driving, you have to be aware, right? Customer service is now top of, you know, ride scores and PPOD. That's all part of customer service. So it's a different caliber of employee. So we may have to pay a little bit more, to get those metrics met along the way, right? Chew gum, jump up and down on one foot. Like, you have to do all the things now, not just deliver boxes.
Yeah. Yeah. And, you know, one of the things that you mention it often, but I think sometimes it is easy to forget is that, yes, a lot of it comes down to, you know, meeting your drivers where they are, finding the right way to motivate them. But you kind of have to start by asking and actually be willing to listen, which
Yep.
sometimes it's really easy to get caught up in delivery metrics and safety metrics and forgetting that these are people that have motivations. And while, yes, you know, it's a deliver these packages, you can get a lot of benefit to your business by understanding what motivates each of your driver differently and how your
Yep.
managers can take advantage of that and make sure that everybody's moving in the right direction. But you do have to be intentional about asking those questions and listening, and that can be.
Yeah. And I think they also, you know, more so now than ever. I mean, we've always been very, acknowledging of our employees and their successes, but I think now more than ever, people need that. They need that good, right? And if you liken your relationship with your employees to the relationship that FedEx has with you, you'll recognize when you're kind of in their, you know, kind of butt about service and safety, right? You're just kind of coming at them like punch, punch, punch. And you know how that feels, right? When FedEx comes at you and they're like, yo, you know, you're this is down and this is down and this is good, but you got to improve here, you got to improve here. You're like, okay, but you're welcome for the 15,000 boxes, right? But that one, I'll get you.
Yeah.
But that's, they're the customer, right? And all of these things we have to remember isn't them being big brother, right? This is them arming their network with the best service, right? And the best employees so that they can go out and sell that. So that
Mhm.
the, right, so we can maintain volume. I mean, at the end of the day, don't you want to be part of that? It's good. It doesn't feel good all the time, but there is a there is a positive reason why we're doing this.
Yeah.
And no one comes to work every day and says, I want to do 96% of what is expected of me, right? So you want to strive for the best and you want to, give your customer the best service they can. And when you do that with a group of people that are on board with you, that's when growth opportunity and, benefits will come.
Yeah.
So it all ties back, right?
Yeah. So there's a couple of operational things that I want us to touch on that I think are kind of top of mind for a lot of people.
Yeah.
Fuel and large package. I think those are, I want to talk about managing them, but before we get into actually, kind of what it looks like today, I think we should kind of set the foundation because sometimes people don't understand how both of those two rates are actually calculated. So can we start
Yeah.
with fuel and then we'll come to the large package and just kind of talk through a little bit about how those fuel rates are calculated and how they change week to week as this price of fuel keeps fluctuating.
Yeah, so this is an interesting one, right? We chose to be in trucking,
Yeah.
right? So fuel is a big piece of that. And when fuel rises, it's going to be a direct effect to us. Um, Fuel calculation, however, is separate, right? So the fuel calculation is very messy. And it's not, well, it's not very messy, it's just messy. But if you understand kind of how you're paid and you understand that it does have some float, then you can understand it a little better. Everything else that we as contractors kind of manage to is very fixed, right? It's a very fixed number. So per stop, per package, but the fuel actually does float a little bit. You have a rate that you've negotiated with FedEx for your fuel, right? And that's a per stop rate. So there's a calculation, but FedEx does change that calculation, right? They give you kind of a flux when things are up or down. So the difference, you have a base fuel rate, which is the one that you agreed to, and then you have a current fuel rate, which is also based on diesel. So for us, right, there's the difference between those two. Those are on your settlement, very easy to find. That's a percentage. That percentage is then applied to your fuel, your PCAT rate. So if fuel in your settlement is up 72%, your fuel rate is also up 72%. Now, that's not going to offset because it is a per stop rate, right? So it's not a one for one. They're not just saying like, hey, your fuel went up $3, so we're going to give you $3 extra per mile. That's not the calculation. It is a per stop calculation. And then you kind of have to figure out what that looks like as far as how many miles per stop you drive, right? Your country contracts, like our country contract, we're getting drilled a little bit on fuel right now because thanks for the extra, 72% of that, 50 cents. But fuel is actually up and I'm at 8 miles per stop. So that's a little messy in that contract where the other contracts even out a little bit more. But I think just understanding that there is some float, and to be fair, there's other customers or contracts out there. Say if you were a landscaper, your customers won't tolerate a big influx, and the customer's also not saying like, hey, sorry, landscaper, I know fuel's up, so here's an extra $100, right? So you have a customer that has met you kind of where you are, understands that fuel's going to flux one way or another, and has adjusted. But it is not going to be a one-to-one. Also, you chose trucking, right? So I always say, like, you never see a farmer scoring the land when it's a drought, right? This is the trade he selected. So you got to kind of figure out then what do you do to address how you can then get more efficient with fuel costs, right? But understanding that fuel rate, and it's super easy. You can take the fuel dollar amount and divide it by your stops, and you'll get an idea, and then you can see what the difference is between what they're actually paying you and what you agreed to. And again, I believe that it's fair at this point. Again, it's never going to be one for one. It's not one for one when fuel's 2.98, and it's not one for one when fuel's $6. So that understanding has to be there first. But they are putting something in place to help with the float. So that's it's kind of a good thing, but I don't think everybody really acknowledges that off the gate.
Yeah, and there's two questions in the chat about fuel. So one, you've addressed this one, but somebody was saying, I thought FedEx covered fuel, and they do. They cover an amount of fuel. So they pay, like Amy was saying, there's a certain amount in your contract that they pay per stop. So,
Hmm.
but it's never going to completely cover your fuel cost. In P&D, it's not designed to cover your complete fuel cost. It's the way
No.
FedEx structured it. But
So
it
it's
does
also
cover
it's
some.
also
Yeah.
called a fuel supplement,
Yeah.
right? For a reason. It's a fuel supplemental charge. They're not paying for your fuel. It's your business. Right? So part of those other costs of operation, right, which is how much it costs to start the truck when you operate. We have a cost of that, right? So we figure out before I load one box on my P&D truck, how much does it cost for me to show up? Right? And we get paid. There's a service charge, there's stop charges, there's package charges, there's all the charges, right? That add up. And the idea is that all of that is going to cover your costs and you will then be profitable. But it's not, the fuel is not a one-to-one, it's a supplement, right? And the benefit of doing business with a customer like ours is that that fuel supplement does in fact float. So, you will get, an increase and an upcharge or an uplift when fuel is up, based on your, agreed base rate of fuel and the current base rate of fuel. So it can also go the other way, right? If you negotiated a high base rate and all of a sudden fuel goes down to 298, things might change a little bit differently.
Yeah.
But yeah, so there's a little bit of float. You just have to, ask your terminal manager or ask your BDS, or your SPS, I guess it is now. Ask them, kind of which is the middleman between FedEx and us. Still a FedEx employee, but ask them, if you have any questions about how to calculate your fuel.
Yeah, and the other question around fuel. So, you talked about you have one of your territories that's rural, and right now we're in a point in time where fuel rose dramatically. So there is the
Mhm.
adjustment week to week, but is there anything that you've ever done or try, like, have you ever gone back and said, I'm going to renegotiate because the price of fuel has gone up? Or is that just something that you're trying to manage operationally?
So we've never really done that because in those contracts, those base rates in the fuel rates acknowledge that, right? So my flux in that contract is much higher than the other ones in the city. So FedEx has already kind of taken that in account. And I hate the word baked in, but they've already kind of also taken in account that I'm doing 8 to 10 miles per stop because my contract is paid differently, right? So it's not, again, a one-to-one, it's very unique. But because of the way that they've structured it, when fuel rises, we do get a little bit more float on that contract as well. FedEx is pretty good about, the engineers are pretty good about that. Now, if you don't feel it's correct, or you don't feel like they can acknowledge that, 8 stops and say it used to be, or eight miles per stop, say it used to be 4 miles per stop and you gained an area, or things got difficult and now it's 8 to 10 miles per stop, that's definitely a conversation that you can have. Start with your SPS, which is your middleman, go to your terminal manager, and then, potentially, open yourself up to renegotiate or have a conversation. Anytime there's hard data changes in your contract, 100% an opportunity, actually the easiest opportunity, because there's no gray and no subjectivity. It's just, hey, this is what it used to look like and now it looks like this, and these are hard numbers. So it's very easy to have those conversations, and those are the conversations that the engineers, right, they're numbers guys, those are the ones that they want to have. So yeah, if it's changed significantly, but for example, my rural contract is, they've accommodated for that. We've had those conversations already. We've shown them the 7 mile driveways, literally to deliver one box. And because it is a sum of all parts also, right? So it's not just how much that one stop costs, but it's the sum of all parts. So you have to look at your contract kind of individually and holistically.
Yeah, perfect.
Yeah.
Okay, so the other operational cost I wanted to talk about is large package. So,
Yeah.
um, talk a little bit about what that rate is, and then we can talk a little bit about how it's affecting the market right now.
Yeah, so I think the first thing to say is, as contractors or as per piece or per mile people, this one gets a little bit fuzzy and it gets frustrating sometimes. The large packages are paid based on a percentage of large packages of your total for the month prior, right? So this month, I'm getting paid a percentage of May, what May's large package percentage looked like. So the large packages have a, it's girth by weight, by height, all these things. And if it qualifies, it's considered a large package. That then contributes to the total of large packages. And then that is then a percentage of all the packages you deliver, right? So that's how that percentage is, kind of made. Then that is applied to all of the stops, right? In your current month. So this month, if I do 10,000 stops, or 10,000 packages, the percentage is applied to this. Last month's percentage is applied to, right, this week's rate on my settlement. So it's a little bit fuzzy in the way that we as contractors want to see. I know for a fact in my head that Joe on Route 420 did 720 refrigerators this week, and I want to see a line item that says rate times 720. That would make me feel secure and warm and fuzzy, but that's not how it does, right? And then there's other factors, right? So just that general factor of the line item of how we think is one frustration, right? Is that that's not how it's paid. It's paid as a percentage, and then that percentage then gets the per piece rate. So that's kind of fuzzy math in general. The other things that I did take some notes to, the other things that, affect that kind of throw us off is when smalls are injected. So, right, so we talk about 2.0 coming. 2.0, no one's overnighting a refrigerator. So the beautiful part about 2.0 is it's the injection of small boxes, right? Peak is also the injection of a lot of small boxes, right? Shirts and pants and shoes and all the things that come in these tiny little lovely boxes that we actually really like to deliver, right? So that's fantastic. But the problem is that even though the ICs or the large packages may rise a little bit or even significantly, the total stops is also rising, right? So that is a little bit of fuzzy math as well, because you can, FedEx is going to bring us all these 2.0 volume and the big boxes aren't going away, but that percentage is going to drop just slightly because we're injecting more. So if you're in math, right, the denominator changes. And then that affects going forward. So those are conversations to have, right? Like, wait, my percentage went from 10 to 7, but I still have to run a full-time bulk truck. Why? Well, because you have more smalls and the bigs are still there and they still need a bulk truck, or whatever that looks like, or even a straight truck for some of the business routes, right? So that's one of the other thing. And then the other big feel is the actual feel, right? Because it's projected a month forward, and you're kind of using that rate, the actual feel of, let's example, it was just April. So May was a little clunky, right? Because there was Wayfair days and we're coming into Amazon Prime, which is June 22nd through the 25th, right? It's Prime days. So if you keep an eye on those things, right? So April's was way down. April's percentage of large packages was way down, but tax season and way days and all these specials pushed all this new volume into the end of April and May. So now I have this low percentage applied to really big volume, right? So the actual feel is like, dude, there are boxes everywhere, right? And then you get the money and you're like, that was not reflective in the amount of work that we did this month. The good thing is that you're delivering those boxes in May, so June should look better, right? And it's kind of a rolling. So, it's very difficult for us to wrap our heads around it as, like I said, per piece and per mile people, because that's what we want to know. Like, I delivered 150 stops. Our drivers are even in that mentality, right? I did 150. I want to make X. I did 100. I know I'm going to make less. Like, and that's just not how large package works. So it gets a little fuzzy, but that is in fact that's kind of the formula, and then kind of the fuzziness that comes with it. We have kind of rode this out though. And there are months that you're like, holy Hannah, we're at 13%. I haven't really seen it. Not recently, because the boxes, they just keep coming for some reason. The big ones.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's kind of so I think I nailed all my concerns, and my kind of, it's all understanding and mindset too.
Yeah. Now, I think exactly what you're saying. Sometimes it can feel like it's a lot more, and maybe the math is just going to be applied to the next month. But have you ever tried, or have you ever found a good way? Like, let's say you do think for some reason they're calculating it wrong. Is there a good way to either check back and try to see if it was right, or is it just something you would almost have to manually track and compare to the next month's percentage?
So you can pull data out of Dro the night before, and it'll give you an idea of like what the cubes are. The problem with Dro in that way is that if there were like three small boxes that added up to 50 pounds for one stop, it's going to mush that together. And those really aren't ICs. It's just three heavy boxes for one customer that went over 50 pounds. And they're not going to count that, but Dro will see it as such. So I think there's a little bit of fuzziness. There, definitely, have your guys like, kind of keep track of what that is, but there is no like 100% way to say like all of these were 50 pounds, especially with the mislabels, right? Like I got a tire the other day, and I'm not kidding you, it was a tractor tire, and it was bigger. I have a picture of my driver in the tire. She's like standing in it, like, right.
Yeah.
And that tire was marked 16 pounds, right? So we had to actually, she reported it and was like, hey, we're not getting paid for this,
Yeah.
right? Not that what we were getting paid was going to offset having to flatbed this thing to a customer's location, but we reported it to FedEx. They had already caught it on their side, because they have a process for themselves on how they catch large packages and mismatched labels and things like that. They obviously have fraud calculations, and the belt lines have scanners, and the IC tuggers have, they do all that good stuff. But on our side, I mean, it really does come down to the people saying like, I'm absolutely blown out, right? So we kind of track it on that regard. We track it more so on resources than on individual packages. So I really don't care about the percentage or how much they're paying me in that regard. I mean, I do, don't get me wrong, but I'm more concerned with how many resources it took me to service them successfully,
Yeah.
right? So I can show them that it was like, $2,412 versus $2,106. Like, okay, you owe me $100, right? I'm not looking at that. I'm looking at like, hey, these boxes are so big, because a large package is very like, okay, it's one, right? In your head, it was one large package. But is it a tire the size of the building? Is it 10 refrigerators? Or is it just a bunch of, auto parts stuff that was over 50 pounds that you can fit in a truck? Right. But what we're finding is the boxes are so big that we're just cubing out. So I
Mhm.
think that's the bigger conversation that you don't really get by kind of, analyzing that. So we would like to say, we typically run 17 routes. We had to run 20 routes on Tuesday because, because of Amazon Prime days, or because
Yeah.
of, way days, or whatever that looks like. But the boxes are just coming and they're getting bigger. So, I think those are the conversations. And if that becomes regular, right, then that's when you have to start tracking it and having conversations with FedEx that, or when your efficiency is dropping, you're like, hey, my efficiency is in the tank, but I'm servicing you. Like, I'm doing this for you, and we got to get the boxes out. So what do you want me to do? They're like, well, buy bigger trucks. I'm like, they're all 1200s. Like, I can't get any bigger, right? I
Yeah.
can't put a straight truck on every route to accommodate way days. So I think, looking at it differently, and not just, is the percentage wrong? Um, you can also tell if your percentage changes based on the number of stops you have. So you can tell, like, if you were super busy and your percentage drops, there's probably a pretty big injection of smalls.
Yeah. Talk a little bit more there about what you're doing or what you can do to manage your business as this large package increases. And like, there's going to be some times where you can see in advance, hey, we're going to have a bad week or a bad couple of days because we know a
Hmm.
major event. There was Prime Day. Next week's going to suck. Just prepare for it. But I think in general, like you said, we're continuing to see a larger number of large packages. So
Yeah.
what, besides building, just buying bigger trucks, which is definitely part of it, what else do you kind of do to manage this as this is happening?
So I think the first thing is get your head right around ICs in bulk and communicate that to your drivers, right? This is job security. It doesn't feel good, but FedEx is using this, their sales team are using this as a way, as like a barrier of entry to get more customers and get more small boxes, right? They want to process more small boxes too. On my line haul trucks, if the boxes are all big, they're running more line haul to move the same number of boxes. So they want the bigs and the smalls, right? And they want more smalls because it's easier on the network, it's easier on everybody. So, FedEx isn't out to get us, but this is a competitive advantage that they've kind of dug their heels into, to get us more volume and to prove that we can do it and that we can do it safely and timely. So, just kind of putting that there, right, is that there's a reason behind it. They're not just going, how can I stress the network, right? Um, so I think that's the first thing, is for everybody to kind of get that off their chest. And then secondly, depending on the size of your contract, right? If you're a smaller contract, maybe your BC, kind of sweeps kind of the more difficult and the bigger bulk, right? Make a plan for it. If you have a bigger contract and you have a full-time BC, full-time bulk route, you might need to put a second one in place during certain times a year. At Christmas time, we have a full bulk supervisor who kind of does bulk and sweeps and pickups and kind of manages service. And we put another guy on. We put 3 more bulk trucks on at peak, right? Just bulk. And the cool thing about that is that we put so when you say like how many people are you hiring for peak, we hired more bulk, but then my other guys were able to do like 300 stops, right? 288, 300 average, because they had all these tiny little things. They're just like the mailman. They're just throwing stuff left and right, right? Well, not throwing, but you know what I mean. Anyway, so that's one thing, right? The other thing, so your managers can help. You can build large package routes. You can also have, a program where they leave it, but they have to have a conversation with you. We have managers, our team leads and managers are walking the dock in the morning because those trucks, they close their doors and they're like, shh, you can't fit it. You open the door and you're like, dude, you can fit this, right?
Yeah.
It's going to be a problem, but you can fit it. So we try to make sure that they're fitting things, having good conversations. We also use drive-throughs, right? Like a lot of my guys drive through an area before they get to their own. They're on the outskirts, and maybe they can hit a bulk stop or a large package stop on the way to their route and kind of free up everybody. So there's a lot of options to problem solve, especially depending on like what size of contract you are. But I think the big thing is, if it becomes regular where you have to run these, make sure that you're having conversations with FedEx about the resources that it takes to service them, so that you're not upside down, making sure that your service is 100%. There is some wiggle room in there, right? But there are going to be days that things are heavy and things are uncomfortable. So I would also say, stay aware, right? Like, let's see, I'm gonna grab my phone real quick, but stay aware of sales. I have a separate email that I, because I don't want every big box special and on sale thing going to my email, but make sure you are kind of addressing, the sales and what's going on in the network. I just sent a message, and of course I'm, trying to do this while I'm on the phone, so I apologize. But I just sent a picture of Way Days, or Amazon Prime Days, to my managers. I'm like, hey, this is June 22nd through the 25th. And it's vacation season in Ohio because it actually gets nice in July. So what does the 26th through July 4th look like? Also knowing that that's a holiday, right? So now we have a week where we're going to have one day off, and we're going to get just beat up with these big boxes from Way Days. And if you look at what's on sale, it's like 80% off, like patio furniture and umbrellas and outdoor rugs. And you're like, awesome. right? So how do you communicate that to your team, but also make sure they don't call off because you're scaring them? So one of the things that you could do in that regard is maybe run a truck or plan for your manager to be in town, or plan to run heavy, kind of like you would for peak. So instead of 15 routes on a 15 route day, maybe you run 17 and you try to offset and accommodate that so you're not reacting, right? We're business owners. Don't be surprised about Prime days. That's in everybody's email, and everybody's cell phone, and everybody's Facebook page, right? Don't be surprised that the volume's coming. You know what we do for a living, right? So I think that's part of the conversation, is like, stay ahead of it, right? We all know that peak is coming, and we're not surprised Santa wants to bring stuff 6 weeks before Christmas. That's not a surprise. But all of a sudden, way days comes, or tax season comes, and you're like, why was it busy? And with that, you may also need to put in some incentive programs, and know that, FedEx is going to pay you for the volume, but they're not going to pay you bonuses. And that current LP rate is going to roll next month, to the next month. So hopefully that'll cushion a little bit, but it might cost you a little bit, to run those extra resources to cover it. But instead of kind of chasing your tail and reacting, is to really plan and get ahead of it.
And I guess quickly for, you keep mentioning Amazon Prime Days. Why, as a FedEx contractor, would you be worried about Amazon Prime Days?
Oh, because we're contracted to bring all the big boxes.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
FedEx has made an arrangement, right? Our customers made these arrangements for us to take some of the big boxes. We've proven that we can do it. And again, that's a marketing strategy, right? It's a barrier to entry. If we can take the big ones, then hopefully the small ones will come. So it's just something that we're going to have to get used to. And you also have to hire with that in mind, right? Have those big conversations with people that the 150-pound boxes are fairly regular. They're
Yeah.
not just one, they're not two-man lift, and I have that conversation all the time. Like, well, I heard, I have to, this box is two-man lift, but you put it on my truck. And I'm like, I will help you lift it into your truck.
Yeah.
Two men.
Yeah.
But we give them the tools they need. In the country in the winter, we actually have snow sleds, right? They're like flat sleds, and
Mhm.
they put the boxes on the drag it right up, because you can't pull in those driveways.
Yeah.
So how do you, make sure your folks have smart footwear if it's snowy or icy or rainy, if they have to trek up there, or call the customer and say, hey, it's winter. Can we leave these at the dollar store? What does that look like?
Yeah.
So large packages, I mean, it's a big conversation. Yeah.
So you brought up another thing. So besides large package, it's June, but we're already thinking peak. So
Yeah.
anything Schedule K or anything you're expecting different this peak season that you're already preparing for, or that FedEx has already started conversations around?
Oh my gosh. I mean, literally, if I say peak to my guys right now, they're probably gonna kill me. To be fair, because again, FedEx is, these new contracts that we've gotten, a lot of it does include quite a bit of growth. So for us, we're already, like, I'm hiring and ramping up almost like it's peak. And that'll be for a before peak time frame. And then what? I get a month rest and hello, right? But we start hiring for peak in July, and I'm hiring right now for 2.0.
Hmm.
So this is just going to be a really interesting, right, push with staffing and people. But it's going to be busy. It'll be it'll be challenging. But I'm excited for it, right? Like, challenging times means growth and more money. It's
Yeah.
always resulted in more money if you do it right and you lean in and you ask the questions. But if you see an anomaly or a pattern, either one of those things, you need to ask questions, and don't wait until you're, upside down or underwater or feeling the pressure. Like, start, analyzing your business, as you go, including large packages, 2.0, time frames, mileage, right? Distance, stops per day, miles per stop. Like, you should know these things about your business so that when something changes, you're like, not so, nah, that doesn't sound right. Uh, right? Or, hey, why are we running 27 routes all of a sudden? We were running 25. Oh, well, we run 2 bulk trucks every day. Oh, I didn't know that. Well, why don't you know that? Right? Ask the questions.
Yeah.
You feel
Yeah.
it in your bank account. I'll tell you exactly why you feel like you're $1,000 a day short.
Yeah. I know for sure that, this time of year, especially like, let's say you're a new contractor who just started this year, you're not realizing, but next month is peak prep. Like, you need to be already starting. And so
Yeah.
Amy touched on it, but if you are in your first peak or you're looking at peak and you don't know how you're going to prepare, reach out to us. We have a course and a program built by Amy around
Mhm.
peak preparation. Or
Yeah.
if you just have kind of custom questions, reach out to us. There's plenty of ways we can help, but it is I always feel like crazy, but it's June. You really need to be thinking about October, November, December already because that is,
Mhm.
sometimes your most important months of the year, but you can't wait till then to start preparing
No,
for it.
no, the opportunity at peak is so big. You have to be prepared for it so that you can capitalize on it. And that's just kind of right. You have to structure it. You have to be thinking about it. You have to think of capacity, both truck and human capacity, what people are capable of, right? And move forward. And we do. We have a great course. Route consultant Josh and everybody, we all came together last year. It was like a 9-week course, I think. We talked about everything from trucks to humans to route structure to dro to oh my gosh, schedule K to how to even figure out what you're doing. It was a great experience. We had a lot of people that brought great questions, and they could learn from each other as well. So it was a great kind of study group, if you will.
Yeah. So I've got one more question here in the chat. If
Yeah.
anybody else has questions in Q&A, this is basically your last time to ask it before we come to an end here. But one more from Allison. So as you're thinking about and seeing these express changes, and we're just thinking about scale in the network, I know scale is always kind of a loose term in terms of how FedEx enforces how large you can get in a given terminal.
hmm
Are you seeing those hard limits change, or is there like a specific number or percentage that we're seeing, or is it still kind of loose?
I don't think this is again my personal
Right.
opinion,
That's all,
right?
and that's
As,
all
as
you got.
being in
Yeah.
as
Yeah.
being in the network, I don't think that I think there's a very floaty scale too, right? Like I don't even know if they know what it's going to look like. I know like we were in a contract and we were, I don't know, 19% of, and we were at the top, and
Mhm.
then they peeled off half the terminal into a different terminal, and now we're like 39%, and that's normal, right?
Yeah.
So like it depends on it depends on the terminal. It also depends on your success, right? Like there's exceptions, and they can give you exceptions on scale if you're doing well. And they can also, if you're not doing well, they can hold you to scale and kind of say you're too big. My personal opinion and what I'm seeing, is the sweet spot in routes is around 22 routes. Okay, whether that's 20 plus bulk or 20 plus, business routes or whatever that looks like. It looks like that's the sweet spot. It takes more management and more attention to detail to manage anything higher than that. Can be done. We have 2 contracts that are running 32 routes. Not a big deal. You can do it. But also I think they're recognizing that those smaller contracts, maybe 13, 14, 15, can be super solid and profitable if they were just a little bit bigger. So I think 22, right? It's not bad to start small. I mean, you can certainly manage that, and big is also good. But I think that's kind of what I'm seeing in the network, as it shakes out, is they're kind of trying to right size everyone. So, to obviously long term, what's the end goal? To have all areas successful, contracted, right? Reduce in non-contracted areas, only lean on contingency and contingency situations, and have contingency kind of not be the norm, right? Or be able to lean on internal contractors for contingency instead of this kind of across the world type things. So I think that's the end game, is they're trying to kind of figure out what the secret sauce is, right? From a size and territory type situation. So right sizing the network would be great because, to be fair, I want people in Wisconsin and Texas and New Mexico and Kentucky and Tennessee. I want everyone to be successful, because when you service Chewy, I get to keep Chewy, right? More
Yeah.
boxes for me. So we all have to pull together to make sure that the network is strong. And I think our customer is really helping to be a part of that. And there are days where I don't feel it all the time, right? Like I'm like, oh my gosh, what's going on here? So it's not always sunshine and rainbows, but I think at the end of the day, if you see their business the way you see yours, you'll recognize that these are all huge measures to protect our volume and to stay nimble, right, in the network, and to stay, I don't know, just stay
Right.
relevant,
Yeah.
right? I mean, we are way doing things different than we were 20 years ago. And if
Oh,
we were, if I hitched my wagon to a train that was doing things the same way they were 20 years ago, I would be pretty upset that they weren't, developing and moving and shaking and trying to get their hands and be more efficient and things. So, they're a pretty big business. So I'm gonna follow lead and continue to service my customer. Not saying I don't have difficult conversations with them or that the data is not wrong or things need to change, because I do have those conversations every day. But I do it in the mindset that I'm still here and I want to be here. So I think that's also key.
Yeah. A question I saw from Travis, how are we seeing multiples being evaluated on FedEx P&D routes? He said revenue multiple, EBITDA, SDE. Typically, multiples on these businesses are EBITDA. I would always ask the question if you're looking at any business and they have a multiple, just make sure that you know what that multiple is based on. Most of the time, they'll just have a multiple listed. All of our listings are EBITDA, but it is really important that you ask that question. It's a good question because some people will just put a percentage of revenue. Some people will put just kind of a guess at what average profit margins could look like. We base it on EBITDA, and generally what we see is somewhere between a high 3 multiple and a low 4 multiple is where most of these lands. There's some that
Yeah.
can land higher than that. There's some that can land lower than that. There's good reasons for both of those, but yeah, that's where I'd kind of say an average multiple lives today, at least.
Yep. And that all depends on the health, right?
There's 100
Not
things that
just
can
the
affect it.
not just the
Yeah,
EBITDA, but also the health, which it
yeah,
does have a one-to-one correlation, but the health and the management style, like all of those things come into play with
yeah.
what you can ask for, right? If you're completely hands off and your business is, profitable and the person can just come in and kind of business as usual, that's going to be one thing. If it's a broken business, you're going to get, you get what you get.
Yeah. So Patrick asked this question that I don't think there's a short answer to, but if you could give a 60-second answer on you're going into your first peak, where should you spend the most time and effort?
Oh, oh my gosh.
Yeah, like I said,
Um,
I don't think there's a short answer. I think that's something
Yeah,
the
so I think honestly, short answer is stops per resource capability and then staffing. So if you can get your staffing right, like trucks, once you get that done, you'll know exactly how many trucks you need. You can rent them, you can buy them. That's a different strategy. But I think the big thing is getting right with FedEx's projections, which are also, 3 or 4 iterations as you go. But, in September, they're going to start having conversations about what the volume is going to look like. And then you take that volume, figure out what you can possibly achieve. So we do like, what are they currently doing? What is the max that they can do, right? Or what can they do at peak? What can I push them to? So if they're at 100, can they do 120? And then on a day, like there's 7 crazy peak days a year, right? On a day where the absolutely hits the fan, what is that person going to do? Like, what can they do? Like, pushing them to the brink, right? And you kind of figure out what that looks like on all 3 of those, what they're currently doing, what they're capable of doing, and what their max would be. And then you take that max number and you figure that out and you manage to those 7 kind of crazy days, whether that's 1 or 2 your managers in a truck or whatever that looks like. But you 100% manage to volume and resources, and then everything else will fall in place. How many scanners you need, how many trucks you need, and all that good stuff. But it starts with the people. They got to show up to deliver the boxes. You can't do it all yourself.
Yeah. And
Nailed
so
it. 60 seconds.
you crushed it. But, if you're trying to learn more tactically about how you can figure out Express at your terminal, if you're trying to think through those situations, if you're trying to figure out what does contingency mean or look like, how do I think about it today? Or how do I think about some of these things like peak? How am I thinking about the rest of this year? You should be here next week in Nashville. All of those topics are things that Amy and the team are talking about in our
Yeah.
offices. Again, completely free to attend. The Thursday event, so June 11th, is targeted towards new investors who are trying to figure this out for the first time. And the Friday event, the P&D Pro Series, is for current contractors and people who've decided P&D is where they want to be. So those 2 events, Thursday and Friday, if you haven't registered already, we'd love to see you there. And we will have 2 full days to talk through all of these
You
questions
got it.
beyond just this hour. I will kind of stop it here for today and call it as we've reached the top of the hour. So, Amy, thank you so much for being
You're
here.
welcome.
All
Thanks,
those
guys.
questions. Thanks everybody else for being here, and we will see you next time. Hopefully next week.
Awesome.